Hi, and welcome back to Psychology with me, Mr. Snyder, and today we're going to pick up where we left off in Module 12 and talk more about childhood development this time. So learning targets today, we'll start with the cognitive abilities during childhood, talk about communication and language, explain temperament, attachment, and talk about the social, cultural, and emotional development through childhood. And let me click this link. Nope. Well, let me click the link. Okay, let's go to this section. That's helpful. Okay, the cognitive development of the child. It's important to know how fast the brain develops. So it triples its weight in the first 2 years, and by 5, it's 90% of its adult weight, and that amount of neurons that are developing leads to complex thinking, such as problem solving and even memories at that point. And so the brain is making huge advancements through childhood. One of the most relied upon theories in cognitive development, or the way children think, is made by Jean Piaget. And Piaget developed a 4-stage theory based on his observations of infants and children. According to Piaget's theory, children form schema, which is a mental concept formed through experiences with objects and events. It's kind of a hierarchy of things. Just think of things that are red or things that are blue, something that doesn't fall into things that are red or blue. We need to accommodate that and form a new schema. And they possess schemata by virtue of a process called assimilation, and that's after the schema. Basically what I said is that they need to alter the schema to form new things, and that's called accommodation, but we'll go over that more in class. Piaget's theory, the first stage that a child enters into is the sensorimotor stage, and this is birth to age 2. So just think of this as the infant learning how to use their senses and their motor abilities to interact with objects in the environment. They have their involuntary reflexes, but after those go away, they begin to interact purposefully with objects by grasping them, pressing them, pushing them, tasting them. Everything goes into the mouth to develop their sensory and motor development. And they move from repetitive actions to complex movements. And so this is between the birth to the age of 2. By the end of the sensorimotor stage, infants need to develop a sense of object permanence. And that's the idea that an object doesn't go away when you can't see it. So babies love peekaboo because it's a magic trick to them. They think that the mom or the dad is gone when they're playing peekaboo. But really, that's how they learn that objects don't go away. Mommy and daddy are just hiding behind their hands. They also develop symbolic thought, or the ability to represent things that aren't there with words. And they're capable of thinking in simple symbols and planning out simple actions. Okay, ages 2 to 7 is called the preoperational stage. And the preschool child here uses language as a means of exploring the world. They can develop more complex language and concepts. They ask questions and understand things through symbolic thinking, or having things represented by other things that aren't there. They're not yet capable of logical thinking, though. That'll come later. One belief that they have at this stage is anything that moves is alive, and that's called animism. So if trees blow, they're alive. Okay, we'll get into that a little later. Some limitations of children in this stage are they tend to believe that they see is literally true. So if Santa Claus is at the mall, Santa Claus is at the mall. Like, they don't think of how could Santa be here, how could Santa be at 20,000 other locations at once. Santa Claus is at their mall, and they don't care. They're glad to see Santa. Egocentrism is the inability to see the world through anyone else's eyes but their own. So they think that their experiences are the experiences of everybody else. And they also focus and they possess centration, which is what leads to their inability to do conservation. So let me explain. Centration is when a kid looks at something and they're only able to see one feature of it, and it's usually number. So if I were to take a graham cracker and I have a graham cracker, and I gave you 2, but I gave me 1, that's not fair because you have more than I do. But if I were to split my 1 in half, then it would be fair because we both have 2. They can't take into account the area and the number at the same time. So it's fair because we both have 2, even though mine are smaller. And children cannot understand that altering the way something looks doesn't change its substance, and that is conservation. It's the ability to understand that altering the appearance of something does not change its amount. For example, this would be the conservations of liquid and number. If I initially present 2 glasses of water to the child and they agree that it's equal, and then I pour 1 glass into a taller, narrower glass and ask them which one contains more, a preoperational child with the inability to conserve will say the taller one has more, even though they just watched me pour from 1 glass to the other. Same thing with number, and you can spread the pennies out. They'll say the longer one has more because it's longer. Piaget's third stage is concrete operations, and this is ages 7 to 12. And this is where the school-age child can become capable of logical thought, but they're not capable of abstract thinking. So they can figure out the conservation problem. They can figure out problems if they're right there in front of them, but they cannot think abstractly or hypothetically about things that aren't there yet. So children, they're capable of conservation and reverse thinking, which is they can take that conservation experiment and pour the glass back in and see that it is equal, and they'll know that it's equal. They're capable of considering all the features, so not just one. They begin to think more logically, and they ask questions a lot. The major limitation is that they cannot deal with abstract concepts. They need to be here, now, and have some sort of physical, concrete, or touchable reality. And then the last stage, which you're all in and I'm in, is the formal operational stage. And this is age 12 to adulthood. And the last thing that we introduce here is that the child is capable of abstract thinking. They understand concepts that have no physical reality, and they can do hypothetical thinking. So here is all of the cognitive development, all of Piaget's stages in one chart. If you would like to screenshot this or write this down. Sensorimotor, preoperational, concrete operational, and formal operational, or operations, whichever one. And this is definitely test material. I would know all 4 of these stages and the aspects of them. Criticism of Piaget's theory. Each theory is not without its criticism, even the leading theories like Piaget's, but the idea of distinct stages is not completely accurate because you don't graduate, you don't go from being age 2 to age 3 and then automatically start to think a different way. It's more of a continuous and gradual transformation than jumping stages. Preschoolers nowadays are not as egocentric as Piaget thought, and object permanence exists much earlier than Piaget thought. He thought it was in the first 2 years. Most children learn it by the age of 1. As far as another leading theory in cognitive development, it's Vygotsky's theory. And he puts more emphasis on the social interactions with other people. So social interactions are important for cognitive development. Children develop cognitively when someone helps them by asking leading questions or provides concepts or examples. And this is called scaffolding. It helps a more skilled learner give help to a less skilled learner, giving them help or giving them hints along the way, and then they can improve on their own with just a little help from the more skilled learner. And according to Vygotsky, here's the main part of his theory, is that each child has a zone of proximal development, or a ZPD. And it's the difference between what a child can do alone and what the child can do with the help of a teacher. The child can only do so many complex things at their current level, and they can't go outside of that level unless they're able to receive help from a teacher, and that is how they can grow. Learning target 12.5, language development. It's important in children because it allows them to think in words. It allows them to ask questions and communicate their needs and form concepts around the world, or about the world. And children use something called child-directed speech. And child-directed speech is when a child's style of speaking is influenced by the way adults and other children talk to infants. You know, with the very high-pitched, repetitive voices, sing-song speech patterns, just like this. I do it with my daughter, and I'm sure you've heard your parents do it with your brothers and sisters. That's child-directed speech, and that influences how the child speaks. So the stages of language development, the child will go through cooing, babbling, one-word speech, telegraphic speech, and then whole sentences. Cooing and babbling happen very early. Cooing is just sort of making one-syllable noises with vowels, just like ooh or ah. Babbling, they'll add a consonant to that vowel, so they'll go ba, 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 or da, da, da. One-word speech, obviously they have one word they'll speak at a time. Telegraphic speech, just very simple sentences, me go or I want or stuff like that. And then whole sentences, obviously, is the last stage of language development. There you go. I forgot these definitions were on here. One-word speech, babbling, cooing, telegraphic speech, and then whole sentences. Autism in here, and this talks about it in the book as well, but autism is a developmental disorder, and so we're going to talk about it during the developmental period. And it basically is when the child cannot form any connection with another person, or their communication is lacking development. It covers a range of problems in thinking, feeling, language, and social skills relating to others. And again, I've told you this before, but I'll just point out that myths connecting autism and vaccines have been thoroughly debunked. You don't need to believe it for whatever reason. If you don't want to get your child vaccinated, don't do it because you think it causes autism, because it does not. Remember, causation or correlation does not imply causation. Okay, temperament. The temperament is the basically one way in which an infant demonstrates their personality. So the development of personality, the development of relationships, and a sense of either being male or female are all aspects of the social development of infants and children. And temperament and attachment are ways that they show their personalities. Temperament are behavioral and emotional characteristics, and basically babies fall into one of three categories. They're either easy, difficult, or slow to warm up. Easy babies are very regular in their schedules of waking, sleeping, and eating. They're very adaptable to change, easily soothed. My daughter is, thank God, an easy baby. Difficult babies are basically the opposite of easy ones. They are irregular in their schedules. They cannot be soothed. They're unhappy about change, loud, very active. And then slow to warm up. They're less grumpy than difficult babies, and they're quieter than grumpy baby or difficult babies, but they're slow to adapt to change. If you can introduce a change to them gradually, they can then warm up to new people and new situations. And temperament styles are strongly influenced by heredity, as we learned about in Module 11, and somewhat by the environment in which the infant is raised, but mostly heredity. A difficult infant who is raised by good parents who are loud and active exemplifies very close goodness of fit of the infant's temperament to the parent's temperament. And a poor fit, say a difficult baby with a easy parents, can make it difficult for the baby to form an attachment. And attachment is the emotional bond between an infant and the primary caregiver. And it's developed in the first 6 months of the infant's life. And it shows in the second 6 months of an infant's life, as far as stranger anxiety and separation anxiety go. Stranger anxiety is very, very weary of strangers. They don't really like being around strangers. They don't like being held by anybody they don't know. And this is normal. This is normal part of attachment. Separation anxiety is being separated from the caregiver. If the caregiver even leaves the room, they become very anxious and get upset and begin crying. Mary Ainsworth conducted an experiment by exposing these infants to strange situations, as far as like playing with mom and a stranger comes in the room, and she identified 4 attachment styles, which are secure, avoidant, ambivalent, or disorganized, disoriented. Secure, they're able to explore happily. They're upset when their mother departs, but they're easily soothed when she comes back. Avoidant is willing to explore, and they don't really touch base with the mom. Secure babies go off and explore, but then come back and sort of touch base, check in with the mom. And avoidant babies react very little to the mother's absent. Ambivalent babies are clinging, unwilling to explore. They're upset when the mother leaves and angry with her when she comes back. And then disorganized, disoriented are unable to decide if they care when mom comes back. They approach mom with eyes turned away from her and avoid eye contact. So disorganized or disoriented is the last attachment style. Mothers in the United States, as far as cultural influence on attachment goes, they tend to wait for a child to express a need before trying to fulfill that need, whereas other cultures, like in Japan, they try to anticipate the child's needs. But overall, attachment is the first important step in forming relationships with others. Harlow was able to do this with his monkey experiment. He took orphaned baby monkeys and gave them a surrogate wire mother, a mother that was made of just wire, but it had a bottle poking out of it for food. And then there was also another mother in the cage that was made of cloth and very soothing. And so the infant monkey spent all its time with the soft cloth-covered surrogate mother and only went to the other mother for food and then came back to the wire mother. And this demonstrates, according to Harlow, what is called contact comfort. And it's an important basic affectional or love variable. And finally, self-concept. Infants begin life without any understanding that they are separate from their surroundings. They begin to slowly learn that they are a separate person from the physical surroundings and other people in the world. And we call that the self-concept because it's the image you have on yourself, and it's based on your interactions with important people in your life. And one way to test whether a baby has a self-concept is to do the rouge test, which is to put a spot of red rouge or lipstick on the baby's nose and then put them in front of a mirror. 6 months to a little over a year, they'll reach out to touch the baby as if it's another child. But 15 to 18 months, the infant begins to touch their own nose because they know that the baby in the mirror is them. And then finally, we've talked about Erikson's theory of relationships and emotional development. He believes that the 8 stages of development we've talked about before, the first 4 occur in infancy and childhood. Each stage represents an emotional crisis or conflict, and the crisis in each stage must be successfully met for the baby to form healthy psychological development. And here are the first 3. These are the ones I would focus on as far as development of the child goes. So birth is basically just know these first 3. As far as infant is trust versus mistrust, the toddler is autonomy versus shame and doubt, and the preschool age is 3 to 5 years old, and initiative versus guilt. And I'll let you read through those. Here are 4, 5, and 6, and then 7 and 8. We won't need to know all 8 of Erikson's theories. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully I didn't wear you out too much. Fill out those learning targets, and I'll see you back here in class later. Bye-bye.